I would like to welcome you to the School of Media and Public Affairs at the wonderful George Washington University. I'm Frank Sesno. I'm the director here, and it's also a pleasure to see some of my old friends from CNN and from other places and other parts of life as we welcome Alan Murray, who takes on this amazing, wonderful new job as president of the Pew Research Center. I can't think of the number of times I have heard or read or referenced Pew in the journalism that we do and the research that we do here in Washington and beyond. It is an absolutely vital source of information. Without further ado, it's a great pleasure to welcome to the job and to the podium Alan Murray. Alan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you all for coming. I should point out that I only took this job in January, so I had absolutely nothing to do with the production of the State of the News Media Report. All the credit for that goes to Amy Mitchell and her great team, Mark Jerkowitz, who's here, and the other folks who worked so hard on this heroic effort. And I will speak about it a little bit today, more as a consumer than a producer of the information. And also, I'm going to be very brief because what Frank and I really wanted to do in getting this group of people together was to have a conversation, to get your thoughts about what we can be focusing on at the Pew Research Center that would help deal with the challenges and the opportunities that journalism faces. Some of you probably know that the release of the State of the News Media report this year prompted some interesting commentary from some of the denizens of the digital world who thought we had been too pessimistic, who thought we were paying perhaps too much attention to the legacy providers of news and not enough to the digital wonders that the world presents. The strongest statement of that came from Matt Iglesias, who said that, how did he put it, Amy? American journalism has never been healthier than it is today. Now, I totally understand that point of view. Many of you know I spent the last 5 years of my career running the digital news operations of the Wall Street Journal, and I can honestly say I never had more fun in my career than I had in the last 5 years. That's partly because the audiences are bigger than they've ever been before. At the Journal, we were getting anywhere from 10 to 15 times the audience that we had at the heyday of the print newspaper. So substantially bigger audiences, by the way, much bigger overseas audience, too. The percentage of that was coming from overseas was up to about 30% from 15% where it had been for many decades. Part of it is the digital world gives us tools to communicate with that audience in much more interesting ways. It's not just news stories, it's blogs, live blogs, rich interactive graphics, long slideshows. And by the way, this is the Wall Street Journal I'm talking about. Until a few years ago, being a photographer for the Wall Street Journal was the punchline to a joke. And probably in some ways, to me, the most interesting part of this revolution is what's happening with video. The ability, the increasing quality of the tools, the decline in the cost of the tools that allow reporters in the field to shoot video and file video over the internet, I think is bringing journalism on the edge of yet another new revolution. And I just want to show you, Jerry, I'm doing all this for your benefit here, a little promotion for the Wall Street Journal. The challenge is to see if I can actually make this work.
WorldStream is the Wall Street Journal's new platform for reporter-shot mobile video from around the world.
Aleppo is Syria's largest city and its economic heart. The struggle for the city is perhaps the most pivotal battle of the 18-month conflict so far. When I got to Aleppo, the battle for the city was in full swing. The rebels currently control about half the city. The regime controls the other half. It remains to be seen who's going to win.
It was a particularly bloody day yesterday here in the Gaza Strip, and as you can see here, there are two funerals, both converging now. onto this cemetery. A massive civilian toll yesterday.
The cruise ship Costa Concordia has become a macabre tourist attraction this summer. It ran aground on January 13th with more than 4,000 people on board. 32 people died. 2 bodies have yet to be recovered from the wreck.
In Cairo, Egyptian protesters hurled rocks at the U.S. Embassy in response to an anti-Islamic internet video.
We are at Ahmed Fried Chicken, AFC, not to be confused with KFC.
The name of your restaurant is?
Florida Fried Chicken.
Florida Fried Chicken.
Florida Fried Chicken.
Not Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No, Kentucky. No Kentucky.
Okay.
Here in Buenos Aires, a big protest looks like it's about to happen tonight all over the country as Argentines gather to protest crime, high inflation, and a slowing economy.
Tonight, Governor Romney will finally give his speech accepting the nomination. They have been preparing for this for weeks now.
President Obama is giving his big speech tonight.
I want a man who had good sense to marry Michelle Obama.
I think it's nonstop from here till Election Day.
We just got 4 more weeks to put up with Barack Obama in the White House.
Crowds are bigger, they're louder.
I'm going to submit.
I voted for Barack Obama.
I think just from the last storm, what scares me more than anything is loss of life.
Well, I'm in Portsmouth, Virginia. Heavy rain. It's getting colder and...
All of that video was shot by a single reporter with an iPhone and an internet connection. Nothing more. No one else there to help them. No other, a simple microphone and the equipment. And I think that the possibilities that presents for the future of journalism are really exciting. And of course, the digital world has also created lots of new tools for people to consume news, and they're doing so. And I'll get to that with this chart in just a minute. The point is, I get the enthusiasm. It is very, very exciting. But if you look at the numbers in the State of the News Media Report, you have to come to the conclusion that we still haven't figured out the economic model. We don't know how to make this business pay. If there is a corner to be turned, it hasn't been turned yet. And let me just show you some of the numbers in the report. First of all, the good news. This is probably one of the most exciting things that we've seen in a while, that people are actually consuming more news. It's so easy with mobile devices. You have your smartphone in your pocket, you have your tablet, and what our research shows is 31% of the people asked said they spend more time with news than they used to. 31% turn to news sources for news. 43% say they're adding to the news they consume every day. So a real change in terms of news consumption. Great thing. And the ad revenue is starting to grow. This is projected through 2016, but you can see the curve starting to turn up. So while in the early days of mobile there wasn't any money there, you're starting to see some money come in. The problem is that as a percentage of total revenues, the digital piece of it is still very, very small, and the growth in the digital piece doesn't begin to make up for the still rapid decline in core revenues for newspapers. And the reason for this is pretty straightforward. It's not that hard to understand. I mean, the way I like to think of it, there are a few people in this room who were old enough to watch Leave It to Beaver. Some of you maybe, yeah, there you go, Shelby, thank you. Some of you may have seen it on Nickelodeon, but if you ever watched Leave It to Beaver, Ward Cleaver, the Beaver's father, was always sitting at the breakfast table reading the morning newspaper. In fact, it wasn't clear the guy had a job. He just sat at the breakfast table reading the morning newspaper. And you realize if you wanted to get a message to the Cleaver family, if you wanted to get information to the Cleaver family, that newspaper was the only way to do it. And as soon as you take that newspaper away and put a computer down in front of them, then there are thousands of ways for information to get to him other than newspapers. And, of course, what we've discovered is that at the end of the day, most advertisers don't really give a damn about journalism or news. They just care about getting to those people, and if they have other ways to do it that are cheaper, they'll do it. And this obviously makes the point. If you look at what's going on in digital advertising, two companies alone, Google and Facebook, are taking the overwhelming share of the pie, and neither one of them actually produce news or journalism as we think of it. And so the upshot of that is this, that the workforce, the people in the newsroom, the boots on the ground, the people who are actually going out and reporting stories every day, is continuing to decline and decline sharply. We're now about 30% below the peak. We're back at about the level we were at when I graduated from college. And I don't want to say what year that was, but you can figure it out. I mean, it's a pretty dismal picture. Now, to be fair, this chart doesn't capture everything going on out there, right? And you have these wonderful examples. You know, you can talk about the Texas Trib or the Min Post or some of these other online operations. But the fact that we could sit here and name them all suggests that the numbers are not big enough to make up for the kind of decline you're thinking there. And the effects of that are pretty clear. You know, if you're talking about a big national story, if you're talking about something like the Boston bomber, well, then we all have lots of sources of information we can get through all kinds of cool news delivery systems, whether it's on our smartphone or on our TV or on our tablet, or there are lots of ways we can have access to a lot of news about a big national story like that. But there are many areas where the effect of this is abundantly clear. I had a senator tell me recently that he thinks one of the big causes of the dysfunction in Washington is the fact that 20, 25 years ago, every member of Congress had at least one local journalist looking over their shoulder. And today, most of them have none. Dramatic change. The same thing. I have a house in Connecticut and watched this the Senate race between Linda McMahon and Chris Murphy last year, desperately trying to find some sort of news coverage of the race in the state of Connecticut, and it was, the Times dipped in once or twice. The Connecticut news organizations provided very, very little coverage. It was almost entirely run on paid media. I remember laughing at one point when Linda McMahon ran an ad saying, "Chris Murphy is lying to you." I said, "Chris Murphy isn't saying anything to me. All I'm getting is paid ads 3 times a week from Linda McMahon." So it's you can see it. If you go to any state capitol in this country, I would encourage you to walk into the State House, ask where the press room is, and go into the press room and see how many of the desks are occupied. The gaps in coverage, I think, are pretty apparent and not that hard to find, and it's not surprising given this chart. Now, the really big story of 2012, I think, is the rise of the paywalls. There are 450 newspapers that have either added paywalls in the last 3 years or have plans to do so this year. Big change in the newspaper environment. At Gannett, now 1/3 of the publishing revenue comes from circulation. You have 46,000 digital-only subscribers. Lee Newspapers, 25% of revenue is coming from circulation. New York Times, 640,000 digital subscribers. So you begin to see this kicking in. Again, the revenue numbers aren't that big, but it is a pretty big change in the landscape. I think it's probably going to help the economics. And my own view is, we don't have data on this, but my own view is that paywalls not only help the economics of journalism, but they actually improve the quality of journalism. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Any of these organizations that's imposing paywalls, and many of you have probably had these conversations, I've had a dozen of them, they really have to think hard about what is it that we're doing that's really valuable that somebody out there might be willing to pay for. It's not going to be writing the 250th Charlie Sheen article. So it's like, so what do we do that's unique, valuable, truly adds to the media landscape, and that maybe somebody will give us money for? I think that's a very healthy conversation. In some ways, the advertising model prevented us from having that conversation, and we're having it now. So I think in the long run, that's going to be a good thing for journalism. But we have a long way to go, and this chart shows it. You can see how sharply ad revenue is declining and how slowly circulation revenue is rising. And if the two lines ever cross, they're clearly going to cross more because the top one is falling than because the bottom one is rising. They will meet at a new point that's significantly lower than where they've been at any time. Jimmy, thank you. You hate for these conversations to be excessively pessimistic. There are some good things. Certainly, there are lots of good things going on out there in terms of our ability to provide news and the ability of consumers to get news. But at some point, the basic economic model that pays for the boots on the ground has to start to turn around. The paywalls may help. We have plans at the Pew Research Center to do a major study on paywalls this year that should shine some light on that. We're also in the midst of a major study on nonprofit news organizations, which are becoming a bigger part of the landscape and maybe need to be an even bigger part of the landscape. So we'll have a report on that. I don't want to put you on the spot here, Amy, but in May. We are working with the Knight Foundation on, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not yet, but we're working with the Knight Foundation on a major study of the consumption of news over Facebook, and how Facebook works as a news delivery vehicle, which I think is going to be, given so many, particularly young people, get their news that way, I think is going to be very interesting. But what we really want to do here with the time we have with this group of people in the room is have an open discussion both about what's in the State of the News Media report, but also more importantly about what are the kinds of things you'd like us to be doing, the kinds of research you'd like to see from Pew that could shed a light on all of this.